Welcome back. In this next part of this video lecture, we want to have a look at what is different with AI today. So, forthcoming from the last session that we had, what some of the reasons are that we see so many advances. The situation that it presents at the moment is that AI technology today builds on better sensors, better actuators, and more powerful agency than ever before. But also, it is operating in an environment that is more conducive to artificial intelligence. We truly have a ubiquitous digital infrastructure. Yeah, so you can think of that as meaning that everywhere you go, you will have 5G connectivity. Everyone has a smart device in their hands everywhere you go, etc. These situations was not the same just as recently as 10 years ago, right? Where we didn't have connectivity everywhere, we didn't have public Wi-Fi everywhere, we didn't have a lot of or the same distribution of computing devices everywhere. Also, of course, as we explained earlier, we have more and more products and offerings that contain digital connectivity components, right? As I said, my household is full of these things. Yours will be too. So we do have more things that are connected that they can speak, so to speak, to an AI or learn from an AI or act with an AI and so forth. And of course, all of these culminate in data being available in unprecedented volume and quality. So what that means is that we have the performance, so how good the AI is, and the scope, so the range of things an AI can do, being vastly different today than from earlier times. Yeah, so it's better at what it does, and it can do more things in very simple terms. But it's not only about this impact of AI. We also see today that AI, as it is now, has more autonomy, it's more capable of learning, and it is also importantly more inscrutable. Yeah, less explainable, less transparent, less understandable, more inscrutable than ever before. And the way to think about it is you can think of it as that historically advances in AI have moved alongside one of two dimensions, either alongside the frontier of performance or the frontier of scope. Yeah, for example, people have worked on artificial intelligence for board games, say chess. Yeah, Deep Blue is an AI that plays chess, and over decades they've made that better. Yeah, so the performance of this particular piece of artificial intelligence got better and better with time. The scope didn't change, and it didn't all of a sudden started playing other types of board games like checkers or go or whatever else, but it did get better at AI. Yeah, similar, we had language processing models, so conversational AI, that got better and better at conversing with people and speaking and formulating responses and stuff like that. Alternatively, we had for a while that advances AI were not concerned with performance but with scope. So we saw that people started building AI models for various different things. The AI was shitty, so to speak. Yeah, it was not performing well, but it expanded the range of things it can do. Yeah, so from text to graphics, from graphics to images, from images to videos, stuff like this. A nice example of that would be if you think about DeepL, you may know DeepL.com, which is a language translation AI, um, actually from Germany, from Munich. And you can have a look at how over the last years, it got better and better at translating German, say, to English. Yeah, it got better. The frontier of performance moved. Then they basically stopped that and they added more languages. For example, 2 years ago when the war started, they added Ukrainian translation to the mix. They also added Norwegian and Finnish and all these other languages, not worrying too much about the performance. It was really crappy translation at first, but they expanded the range of language it could expand to. Now, what we see now is that this either or distinction isn't actually all that distinct anymore. We see now that the overall frontier is expanding. Yeah, so like a balloon that is blowing up bigger and bigger alongside both performance and scope. Yeah, for example, DeepL, what I mentioned is when you look at closely what it has done over the last year or so, yeah, it actually has gotten incredibly good at many, many languages, and it added many, many, many languages more. So it's both in performance and scope. All of a sudden, it's expanding its frontier. How does AI do that in general? Either alongside the frontier of performance or scope, or in fact both. It does that by advancing the three core dimensions: autonomy, learning, and in turn also inscrutability. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that the frontiers, so the boundaries and limits of autonomy have been shifted. In the past, AI was always human bracketed. What that means is that there were always human people determining the input data, what it would sense, how it would sense, what it perceives about the environment. And they would also control and oversee the output, what it was actuating, in fact. Yeah. That was always human bracketed. So it was basically human at the start and a human at the end of it. What we see now is that we see AI technology increasingly start to mask and control information in their own right, meaning they become generative, not bracketed anymore. A good example for that would be um, Twitter bots. Yeah, so automated AI operating on social media channels that would automatically determine, without any human input whatsoever, which tweeters to follow, which tweets to repost, which to share, which to like, and so forth. There's no bracketing, there's no human oversight in this anymore. Yeah, which also means that the interaction between humans and AI is taking on a new configuration. It's no longer the controller mastermind, but more a user or some sort of a partner, so to speak, of an AI. We see a similar situation happening in the frontier of learning. In the past, historically up to this point, AI learning was also limited by certain human factors. For example, it required data to be inputted in a particular format in a particular way. So we needed human data analysts to prepare training sets for AI models to learn from. It also, the data that we could use to train AI was also limited by corporate boundaries. So the question of the firm, what data do we even have available? Do we have data about customers, about users, about competitors? Yeah, and of course there were technological limits. So for example, the algorithms that determine how an AI could learn. What we see now is that, number one, some of these human and corporate limits, they've blown away because of the big data about everything and anything that we have available. So we don't really have a limit to that anymore. What we also have is the technological capacity, in particular the software algorithms that we use for learning. They are different now and essentially mean that AI learning has become non-human mediated. To illustrate that, the contemporary forms of AI, what we've seen over the last 10 years, most of that is what's called machine learning, either supervised machine learning or unsupervised machine learning. Machine learning operates is that we have a learning model, an AI model, that we feed so-called training data. That is data that tells you, look, I want you to make a determination about an outcome about this data set, and I'm going to tell you what the correct answer is. Yeah, in the supervised format, it is literally human feeding back to the AI whether or not their outcome, what they predict, is in fact correct or not. Yeah, yes or no. And in unsupervised learning, we do have data sets that still contain factual information about what is right and what is wrong, what is correct and what is incorrect. And we tell the AI to basically give the feedback to itself. Yeah, still these forms are human mediated. We need training data sets and we need outcome variables and we need, what's called ground truth. We need to know which information is correct or not so the AI can learn. What we see now happening is that we have alternative algorithms, alternative approaches to learning. Deep learning, reinforcement learning, or adversarial learning are non-human mediated. In simple ways, they don't need a training data set and they don't need ground truth. They don't need to know anymore to learn whether or not the information that has been given is in fact correct or not. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So a good example here would be AlphaGo. If you're a movie buff, you could just simply go to Netflix, watch that movie. The movie is about the story of one particular piece of AI, AlphaGo, which was trained to play Go, the Japanese strategy board game Go, which is sort of like chess on steroids. It's supposed to be a much more complicated strategic game like chess, but just way harder. And they've built an AI model to learn how to play Go. Yeah, and similarly as to Deep Blue, what Deep Blue did in chess, AlphaGo tried to beat a human player, and it didn't do that very well until 2016, where it actually AlphaGo won against the Grandmaster of Go, like the world champion of Go, Lee Sedol. That's the guy on the right here. in a board game of Go or in a series of games of Go. And the key thing here is that once it learned how to perform better than a human, it literally never lost again. Yeah. And the interesting thing, if you look at the technical details, is that it literally learned how to play tactics in Go. So it didn't just compute all the possibilities. What are the moves that are theoretically possible and which of them should I do, which is called the brute force learning. It literally learned how to be strategic and clever and play the game Go. Yeah. What is also important is that the frontier of autonomy, the frontier of learning, moving away from human interaction, oversight, and input, it also means that the AI is less scrutable by human beings anymore. It's less understandable, less explainable, because it moved away from the humans for learning or for autonomy and agency. Yeah. So, for example, in the past, we had actually deterministic explicit logic, sort of if-then statements coded into the technology. It has moved to probabilistic logic, like the ones you would have seen in Google search engine when you start typing, and it doesn't give you a determinate answer, it gives you a probable answer. And now we're moving into completely new forms that are even less scrutinizable by humans. What is important to realize here is these frontiers haven't just moved from the past to now. Yeah, so for example, that it moved from human bracketed autonomy to generative, truly autonomous agency. Yeah, or from structured proprietary learning to large-scale trace data unmediated learning. Um, the important thing to realize is that, of course, these frontiers will keep on moving, and we can only guess as to the directions in which it will take. Yeah, we can make some guesses. So, for example, one possible future frontier might be in AI enacted materiality in autonomy. So far, we have generative autonomous agency of AI in sensing and acting in the material world. But maybe in the future, it will start shaping and changing the material world. Think of an AI that works together with a 3D printer and brings objects into being. Yeah, like buildings or infrastructure, or in fact cars. Yeah, so for example, we published a paper this year about product design involving AI, and it tells the story of the hack rod. You can Google that, the hack rod, which is a car that is built by a generative piece of AI, not by human. Yeah, so this is an actual car that you can buy and drive and use. And inscrutability, as a second example, we see similarly potential future and free. In fact, I think we're already seeing that this frontier has already been reached. Yeah. So in the past, deterministic logic, yeah, so predetermined structures, for example, in conversational AI, how conversations would unfold, to probabilistic logic that would guess, make informed guesses about what's likely to happen. But now we have maybe narrative knowledge logic. What that means is that ChatGPT doesn't just give you an answer to a structured question; it tells you a story. Yeah, remember the example that I gave you about when I asked it about myself? It told a story about my work and my achievements and stuff. Um, and you would take a lot of knowledge and inside information to figure out that part of this narration of this story isn't actually true. And it also takes a lot of different scrutiny to figure out whether what part of that is true and maybe objectively incorrect, whether that matters to the story or not, whether that is beneficial or dangerous, perhaps. Yeah. So this narrative knowledge logic in disclosure is, in fact, I think, where we are already. Yeah, that we need to understand not just facts and output, but actual real stories, and that can be very hard to scrutinize. Yeah. So just to give you one example, and this is a little task I want to leave you with, is when you have a look at conversational AI, so text to text AI, what it has been used for as late as last year. Yeah, so this is a graph that shows the most common use cases for conversational AI chatbots. What do companies use chatbots for? Have a look. We have use cases such as making a reservation, finding a human to deal with your problem, or giving an answer to a predetermined question. When you think about these use cases, they're all fairly deterministic. They all follow a particular structured way in how that conversation unfolds. Yeah, think about You make a reservation for a dinner table. It's always going to be the same. We are a party of six. We look for a dinner table at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Do you have something available? Yes, no. Yeah, so fairly structured, fairly deterministic, maybe a little bit of an element of probability in it. Yeah, so for example, when you think about getting an answer to a question, yeah, you get a likely answer. But contrast that, and this is what I want you to do with the things you can do now with ChatGPT. Yeah. So when you Google things you can do with ChatGPT, you get to a page, you get to different blog posts. Yeah, I picked one of them, bebop.com, which is a blog post about the cool things you can do with ChatGPT now. And I want you to just go on that web page and just have a look for yourself some of the examples that I give. And it's amazing. Yeah. It can program. It can play games. It can write music. It can solve math formulas. It can write entire essays. And for us, it could help us grade your essays. So, what I want you to do is to have a look at how these frontiers that I've talked about, how they are, or they have already moved past what I just explained the contemporary frontier actually is. And that'll be the end of this part of this lecture.